now I feel like we were talking before we started, if you had an experience with mold and mold sickness and chronic illness, if something happens in your home, like I feel like pre-mold, I would be like, oh, we'll dry that up with some towels. Like we had a dishwasher that busted and, we had water. And so you get some towels and you just dry it out and, maybe put a fan on it. But now it's like we have a water, it's like an event and you need to call somebody. You need an industrial dehumidifier. You need fans to dry it out. You might have to take trim off. You might have to cut drywall out. This is how serious it is. And people think this is so over the top, but we are so toxic just from living in this world, and our bodies, just from what Dr. Kyle says, your primitive reflexes or return reflexes, you have full of pesticides and you eat crap food and you don't even realize it's crap because I can't even talk about our government.
Standard American diet.
Yes, the standard American
Sad.
diet is just very sad, and so our bodies cannot fight. They just cannot fight. So we have to be vigilant in our homes.
100%. So we'll end kind of close with this stuff. And I know if you're watching this, you probably maybe want to know like what Brooke's current situation is. Yes. And it's really cool because Brooke is actually now at the point where we're starting to actually get a really cool turn and shift. So Brooke actually literally went from living and sleeping in our clinic to now she's now able to go from the clinic to an Airbnb, which is good.
No, we are Louisiana residents now. Thank you. We have a lease, so we are not Airbnb. We are legit in this so deep, and I tell everyone we're not leaving this town until she walks out of there and she has a life again.
She's a cage. They're Cajuns now.
We're apparently.
We got to get boudin, cracklins. So she's starting to do really well. The cool thing is that her gait control's getting, she's starting to walk faster. She's joking around, which is amazing. Tomorrow I actually have an amazing doctor, Dr. Jerry Levine, who's going to be flying in. She's an Erling specialist who actually puts kids into Erling's lenses, like color lenses, that helps them out. But yeah, it's pretty neat now because one of my assistants, her name is Lexi, and Lexi is she's actually going to be a chiropractor. And she actually came into the clinic, which is pretty cool. She came in because, I don't even know the story. I'll tell you the story about her?
I do know that she told me the story and she felt really embarrassed about it. And we're probably just going to really embarrass her right now. But it really is true that God can use everything for good, right?
I have to say what happened. So every one of my staff members, or I should even say team members, is that they all pretty much came in. And so Lexi came in because she was speeding and she got a speeding ticket and she had to do community service. And so she had asked if she could come in, and I'm like, this is going to be very interesting for you to see this. This is actually like a life-changing place, but by all means, you need to see this because, if you spend one day in my office, your life is completely going to be changed forever, and you're going to be super grateful, that you're even just breathing. And so she comes in, and she's like, holy crap, Dr. Daigle, this is nuts. This is real serious stuff going on here. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I didn't even know this even was in Lake Charles. And I'm like, yeah, most people don't.
She said she was hooked after 2 days. It only took her 2 days, and she said, I want to do this.
So she asked me, she's like, Dr. Daigle, do you think that I could be a chiropractor? Or I'm like, look, you can be anything that you want. It just depends on your determination if that's what you really want to be. And I was like, now, again, you're going to have to study pretty hard to get in. People don't realize that chiropractic actually, we take a lot of the same classes you take in med school. It's a little easier to get into chiropractic school, but actually maintaining and actually staying in, a lot of actually the fail rate, most people actually fell out the first 2 semesters. But chiropractors are actually pretty educated people. There's a different kind of science, methodology behind chiropractic versus standard, medicine or allopathic medicine. But, there's a time and a place. We all have a place in society. But yeah, I told her, you can be anything, absolutely. And so it's amazing because she's actually still going to school, doing her prereqs, and then she's still working in the clinic. And she's now getting a chance to change people's lives before she even goes to be a chiropractor. So, yeah, and it's cool. So my associate doctor, Dr. Vivian, who's unbelievably talented, she came to see me when she was in college with migraines, and we helped her out, and she decides to not go to school to be a physical therapist, but now a chiropractor. And then I had another intern who came to see me literally when she was in college and undergrad because she had to get some kinesiology credit. So she comes in, and Pamela is her name, and she just graduated chiropractic school. She's now in the office, and she's either going to go work in my London location or the Middle East, or she's going to Atlanta, one of those locations. But it's pretty cool. And then Jenna, who's my most talented assistant, and she's been with me since she's literally been in 8th grade, and she would literally take a bullet for me, and I tell her all the time, because when I got her, she actually was, she had really bad debilitating back pain, and I was a cheerleader, so at 7 o'clock in the morning, she had cheer practice, and so I was driving about 45 minutes to go to the office, this practice that I had to go treat her before school, and then I wouldn't open my practice up till like 9 o'clock or 8:30, and so I had like a lot of idle time, but I would literally go there just for her. And, and I really wasn't getting paid very much to do that, but it's just that, I felt so bad for her because she couldn't hardly stand up. And then I'm also an athlete. I know what it's like that you will literally do anything to perform. And so I got to watch her literally enjoy all 4 years of her high school career cheerleading. And now she's an assistant in our clinic. And I tell her all the time, like, Jenna, you know what? I can put you on a plane and fly you to any clinic that I actually coach and train. And you could actually train these doctors to get better results than they're getting. And it's because she knows that there's actually a developmental blueprint about how the brain develops. She can talk to you about the cerebellum, the pons, the medulla, all kinds of stuff. She can talk about mold. But yeah, and I have a very educated staff. I love every single one of them.
They really are great.
And I just want to thank them because I know they're going to watch this, and you guys are freaking amazing, and I'm super grateful. And the story that you mentioned, this is pretty crazy, but I had one time we got a case that was like super late that showed up in our clinic at 1:30 in the morning, and we might eventually show you what we did at this case. But I asked my staff, I said, hey, I got a call, and this kid was at I think Arkansas Children's Hospital
in Little Rock.
Mm-hmm. And they said that this kid only had like a couple hours to live, and if we would see if the lasers would help him out. And I took the case on, and as I got the phone with the doctor and the parent, we actually literally we literally were sitting a jet to go pick this kid up. Fortunately, we have pilots and all that to go pick people up. And so we're. I asked my staff, I'm like, hey guys, look, we're gonna literally get a case that's gonna come in about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. How many of you guys want to help? And literally all 11 people raised their hand. And I just looked around and I'm like, geez, and I just was like, guys, you are unbelievably amazing people for doing this. And
because like, it's not just a job. Like, that's the thing, the vibe. I hate to use the word vibe, but in your clinic, it is, yes, it is. It's really a family. You guys are a team and a family. And people, they pitch in where needed. And the patients, I love seeing your staff hugging the kids. They come out to the waiting room to get them, and they hug them, and it is the sweetest thing. And so you make people feel valued. And I know you make your team feel valued because I see that firsthand because I've slept in your clinic before. And I know they feel appreciated for sure. And Lexi told me, she works with Brooke, and she said to me one day, and I don't know if you've ever heard this, but she said, since I started working with Brooke, she said, I don't complain anymore. She said, I feel grateful because, she sees that firsthand, and what a gift to learn when you're so young to be grateful. But she said, I don't complain anymore because seeing what Brooke goes through.
Yeah, it's tough as a parent. I go home some days, and my wife knows when I have an emotional day because I drive up and it takes me 30 minutes to get inside the house. And it's challenging because, have a very impactful, like it's pretty much like an ER in my clinic. Like I have people that are, having seizures and people that are fainting. They have mast cell activation syndrome, or these kids are just
They have
foaming
POTS.
at the mouth.
They have POTS and everybody's passing out and
It's intense. I mean, it's very intense. Like I've had, doctors that come into my clinic to shadow and they have a panic attack because they're like, I don't know how this is intense. Like these people are on like oxygen and they have stridor breathing and it looks like they're about to choke or aspirate and you're just super calm. And I'm like, well, first of all, I always pray that if God sends people to me, that, we're just going to be a vessel and we're going to help with intervention and we're going to watch, when we like to watch miracles happen. But when I get home some days, I literally just get there and I turn my car off. And then I just always do this. I'm like, God, thank you so much. The fact that I was able to drive here and make it home safely and that I'm actually still breathing. And if you're listening to this, I just want you to know that you should, no matter what's going on, your condition, if you're still able to open your eyes and you can speak, you can see, you can hear, you can walk, you can taste, you can move, that you should be grateful. Because the patients that I deal with on a daily basis, they would fight to be in your shoes, especially if you're on Instagram watching this, that you can actually literally move your thumb up. I have patients that can't even move. They can't even open up their eyes, but they can hear. Some of these kids actually can barely even speak. And so I just want to let you know that, all this stuff that Katie and I are talking about, the purpose of this stuff is to just educate you.
and to give hope. I feel like, Dr. Kyle, like it's hope. Like you give people hope. And that makes me really emotional because I felt like at the point where I just felt like maybe it was like, I don't know, that God was calling Brooke home to her eternal rest. And I thought, okay, Lord, if that's what you have for her, your plans are the best, but you're giving people hope.
So you got a chance last week to see my buddy Colin.
Oh, Colin.
All right. So just, I'll never forget this. So Colin, and we'll end on this one because I know we got to get Jordan home. And but so Colin shows up. Colin is from Kentucky. Colin is actually, he's driving down the road and he's driving the speed limit and it's raining and it's 50, he's going 55 miles an hour in his car hydroplanes and he wraps it around a tree. He has a really severe diffuse axonal injury, which means he had shearing in the brain.
He was 17, right, at the time?
17. And he's in a wheelchair and Colin's all puffy. His dad is, his dad's this really bowed up guy. He likes to work out. His mom is this unbelievably woman. And I know you're going to listen to this and you are an amazing woman.
She is.
And she's a cowgirl.
She is.
You got to like cowboys and cowgirls. And so she's got this relentless, she's like, you know what, I'm determined to get my child better. And that's pretty much who ends up in our clinic. So so the mom comes in, she brings the kid, Colin, and I asked Colin, I said, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to walk again. And I'm like, all right, well, first of all, you got to crawl before you walk. Can you crawl? He was like, no. I'm like, okay, well, that's our first step. Let's get crawling. So then, we just posted this video on Instagram of Colin, so you can watch this if you want to know kind of the impact of what we do. And so, we literally got Colin. He was literally like this. He was so bent over, and then we started working on his primitive reflexes, and then we altered his diet, and he talks to you about inflammation and drinking water and oxygen. Anyways,
not eating gluten or dairy.
And we literally work hours every day getting rid of these primitive reflexes and the posture reflexes, and we start working on his core. And the coolest thing was Wednesday, Jordan comes over, and I haven't done this yet, but I was like, hey, Colin, are you ready to walk, buddy? And he's like, and he says, a 4-letter word. And I'm like, let's do it. And so he starts walking, and I literally just kind of step back. Now, if you're a physical therapist, an occupational therapist watching that video, I did not have a belt with him. I do have them, but it was just one of those things that we just literally were like, go for it. And he did, and I was there to catch him, and I wouldn't have fallen. I have these people that sometimes send me these messages like, I can't believe you did this, and so that's for you. But the cool thing is that I actually was able to watch this kid literally go from a wheelchair to walking. And he went to do that through getting rid of his primitive reflexes and then getting rid of these posture reflexes and then working on core stability. But guess what? we also started talking to them about mold. Because if you have a head injury and if you have any underlying factor, a strep infection, mono, mold exposure, Lyme, those infections could actually return, and that could actually be one of your limiting factors to why you can't physically recover. And it's very important to go back to the basics and make sure that you eat right, you drink water, you get proper oxygen, you have good ventilation in your room, in your home, and in your vehicles, in your work environment, and you turn around, find any type of pathogen if you possibly have that, and you integrate primitive reflexes, posture reflexes, and you watch, like Dr. Miller talks about, as you get this brain imbalance fixed, and that right there is how you go ahead and recover.
Do you know what his mom told me? When I met her in the waiting room, Laura, you're just amazing, and I'm so inspired by your drive. She told me that they had done physical therapy for a long time, and she said, because she bought her second laser, and she told me, she's like, I bought a second laser, and she said, we were doing this physical therapy all the time, and she said, when we stopped going to physical therapy and we focused on lasering, she said he made more progress doing the lasers than going to physical therapy, which I feel like is so unusual. People think like, oh, you have to move the body, but they don't understand the brain is so powerful and that you need to work on, not just that physical strength, but strengthening your brain and your brainstem. And I just thought that was a really cool testimony.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I get a chance to, Dr. Crawford and I work with training physical therapists. And at least when we first initially start, and if you're a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, and you're listening, do not take this in any disrespectful way. But when we get these PTs and OTs, they're a little resistant sometimes when we were teaching them because, we are a chiropractor and like, what does a chiropractor know about rehab? And it's like,
Yes.
Look, the one thing is if someone has a brain injury, or even a chronic infection, you need to look at the brain itself and you start looking at these imbalances. For example, what's called cranial nerves is actually how the brain actually uses its senses. And you start applying senses to stimulate the brain to help the brain function better. And it's like this. If you don't have good blood flow, then you're not going to have good function. And so that's why our lasers work so amazing is because they enhance blood flow. And if you can find an area of the brain or a cranial nerve or an organ or a muscle or a joint that doesn't function good, it doesn't have good nerve supply and it doesn't have good blood supply. And it probably doesn't have good nutrient supply because if you're not supplying blood there, you're not getting adequate nutrients. And that's why our lasers are so powerful is the fact that these things actually literally do. It's a point and shoot. You literally just put it over an area and you turn it on and it enhances. The same thing happens to the brain or the cranial nerve or the organ or the joint. And it's pretty neat because these things can literally be life-changing if you're out there. But it goes back to this. If someone has a brain injury, literally look at that person and actually look at an assessment for their posture and look at their cranial nerve function and even look at their soft palate and see that their vagus nerve is actually going to be weak. And then if you find it weak, then do vagal exercises, do core stability, work on integrating their posture reflexes and their primitive reflexes, fixing their vestibular system by actually using specific balance assessments to monitor, canal positionings. And then you turn around and then you start doing specific coordination patterns, walking, lifting, doing squats and lunges. But I feel that if we take it back all the way down to how there's a foundation, which is actually developmental functional neurology, and we look at the platform and we literally lay a platform, that's how we're going to recover. I was telling this family that their daughter got hit by a train and she spent years trying to do all this different rehab. She went to the top hospitals, the top rehab, the top, therapist. But I told her, I said, hey, look, if you're going to build a home, you don't turn around and build a roof and start putting shingles on. You make sure that you have a blueprint and you make sure that you start with building a foundation, a concrete slab. And that right there is actually how you develop. And that right there is how we get people to recover. So if you're out there and you have mold or Lyme or parasites or you had a head injury or your child has a developmental delay or your child's nonverbal or you're chasing this diagnosis, just remember this. The brain inherently has a blueprint, and so no matter what type of condition you have, just work on actually the blueprint first. And remember this, if your brain has all these toxins that are building up, the first line is to actually work on getting integrating the primitive reflexes, getting the vagus nerve working and nutrients, so you can actually bring this toxic load down. And if you do that, you cut your finger, it can heal. Your body's self-healing. And yeah, that's pretty much how you do it.